Good morning. How are you this morning? We're so happy that you have joined us. I have loved these phase videos that we've been able to see over the past few weeks. My name is Tanya, like mentioned earlier, and I'm the family ministries pastor here. And I'm excited to be able to speak on something that's so near and dear to my heart, not something just as a parent myself, but of the position that I hold here as the family ministries pastor. Our kids and our teenagers are so important. And everything that we can do to be able to be involved in every phase of their life over time, our church and our people are just only going to grow more for it. I love these phase videos. I love looking at everything on the walls that they have up. It makes me think of my own room growing up. I don't know what you had on your walls. I had Leonardo DiCaprio posters and the Titanic posters. Anyone Titanic days? Anyone? Yes. I don't know what you had. Maybe it was NSYNC posters. Maybe you had a Metallica poster up. Maybe, oh, yes. That's a true Metallica fan right there. Maybe to bridge some generational gaps, maybe Elvis was your thing. You had Elvis posters up. Whatever it is, I want you to re-engage the senses of the phases that you went through, because the truth of the matter is that we need to know what every kid and teenager needs over time so that we can engage the next generation. So even if you're not a parent yourself, maybe you're an aunt or an uncle, maybe you're a cousin or a babysitter or a small group leader, you can probably think of a kid or teenager in your life that you can be able to apply this to. In previous weeks, Craig talked about a man in the Old Testament, and his name was Nehemiah. And Nehemiah had a heart and a burden for his hometown because the walls were completely destroyed. And so he wanted to go in to be able to fight to rebuild those walls. So he gathered community, he gathered friends, he gathered family, and they fought together to be able to rebuild what was broken. And I think that Nehemiah knew what we all instinctively know is that we are better together. Craig also talked about last week this idea of phases, that the phase in a kid or teenager's life is not something to be rushed through. It's not something to be survived, even though that's what we feel sometimes. But it's something to be celebrated, and it's something to be understood. We would define a phase as this: a time frame in a kid's life when you can leverage distinctive opportunities to influence a kid's future. Every one of us can point to someone who showed up in our own lives. I know for me, it was my 6th grade teacher, Mrs. Bennis. She was also my cheerleading coach. And then in a different phase, it was my youth pastor's wife, Alina Hart. And then in a different phase, it was my other youth pastor, Pastor Jim Westheim. But because someone showed up for me, I know how to show up for somebody else. It taught me truths to be able to show up for other people around me. And the best way that we can understand how to show up in the lives of kids and teenagers that God has placed in our life is to understand these 6 things that every kid or teenager needs. The good news is that Craig talked about 3 of them last week. So we're halfway through the message. So this is good, right? You're feeling good. But the 3 things that he talked about, the first one was time. This idea that time over time gives us history. The second thing that every kid or teenager needs is love. That love over time equals worth. And my favorite of what he talked about was words. That words over time gives a kid direction. I was actually able to apply this to my own situation this week with my son, Grayson. He said this concept of speaking when a child does something that we're not happy with, that we're not pleased about. We need to speak over their identity of who God called them to be and the potential that we see in them, not speak over their behavior. And that was so powerful to me. I even did that to Grayson, and it was a great moment. It even sent him to tears, poor guy. But that's how important and how strong our words can be. So we're going to kick off this morning with the 4th thing that every kid and teenager needs over time, and that is stories. Everyone say stories. Any teacher, any marketer, any politician, any photojournalist, they are all going to tell you that the story is everything. We even have a storyteller team that serves on our crew. It's their job to find and film and create and take pictures of stories, because it's stories that spark imagination, that helps us to feel what someone else is feeling, to be able to see a world that's bigger than ourselves. That's the power of stories. But stories are things that just happen to have happened, unless you are Spielberg and you decide to produce a movie out of it and you get an Oscar for it. But stories are powerful. And when you collect stories over time, something amazing really happens. Stories over time help to shape a child's perspective. And that's why kids need stories. Kids need different types of stories. For example, they need family stories. I don't know why, and my mom always says this about me. She's like, why is it that you remember the craziest stories about your childhood? Why can't you just remember the normal ones that I tried to craft and Pinterest worthy it? And the truth is that it's true. All of the things that happen in our life creates memories. For me, right now, the one that comes to my mind is growing up, my dad was a big As Seen on TV fan. So I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but there was something called a Flowbee. Have you heard of a Flowbee? Anyone? Okay, yes, okay. A Flowbee is this thing that you hook up to your vacuum, okay? Hook it up to your vacuum and you put it on your hair. And it cuts your hair because there's a blade inside of the tube. So imagine this picture with me, just kind of cutting your hair with a vacuum. My dad did that for all of my life. And he even tried to cut my hair with a Flowbee, and it was the worst haircut that I've ever had in my entire life. I can laugh about it now, but man, it was hard then. But that's a memory. That's a story. I know that my mom, she was a teacher for 27 years, and so she had the summers off. And so every single Tuesday in the summer, she branded adventure days. These adventure days were days that I could count on my mom to do something with me, whether it be try out a new ice cream shop, or I grew up by St. Louis, whoop, whoop. And we would go to Forest Park, we would go to the Science Center, we'd go to the Magic House, or I grew up in Alton, Illinois, my actual hometown, and we even went to Robert Wadlow's museum, who was the tallest man to have ever lived. He's a hero in our town. I got to step inside of his shoes that were like this big. But it's those family memories that help to shape a relational history. It helps to fuel a healthy perspective about a child's identity. It helps them to be able to work out what worked in a family and what didn't, what the future can look like and what their part can be in it. Another kind of story are cultural stories. Cultural stories help to stimulate a kid's imagination and to be able to build their understanding of a bigger world around them. I know I went on missions trips in high school, and the amount of empathy that I had and that developed in me whenever I went to these countries and I saw kids and families and parents who had so much less than I do. And they still had such a joy about them. And they loved the Lord. And they could see how he was showing up in their life. And that was a really big deal for me. I thought, man, God is so much bigger than anything that I can imagine. And it helped to be able to shape my perspective. Another kind of story is Bible stories. And I didn't save this one for last because it's the least important. It's actually the most important. But Bible stories, in the Bible, there are 66 books written by 40 different authors over a 1,600-year time span. And the most amazing thing about the Bible is you can see woven over this 1,600 years this common thread that every single story points back to a God who loves us so much. Without the Bible, kids and teenagers fail to connect all of the great mysteries of the universe to a creative and loving God. They'd miss out on the spiritual history that helps to build foundations in their faith. Stories over time, this is our equation, gives a child perspective. Gives them perspective. So what does this have to do with you? Whether you're a parent or a leader here this morning, I hope that you will reimagine yourself as a storyteller. Reimagine yourself as a story collector. You can be a producer. You can be a librarian. You can use all of your social media filter skills to be able to document and take pictures. Yes, there is a use for that. To be able to document and create stories, to be able to develop a richer history for your kids. The truth is this, is that we can never underestimate the potential of God-given imagination. There was a landmark study done in the Journal of Research and Personality, and it actually indicates that fictional stories, the more fictional stories you read, the greater the empathy that you'll develop. And why is that? Because it helps you to feel what someone else feels. Just think about with me what a child imagines whenever he envisions himself fighting Smaug the dragon with Bilbo on a lonely mountain. What a child imagines when traveling with Lucy through time, through a wardrobe, into a frozen land, the Chronicles of Narnia. They see more, they care more, they hope more. And that imagination is that thing that your faith develops. Have you ever considered that maybe God gave us imaginations so that we could imagine things about him that we've never seen or that we can't see? That's why you should foster imagination within a child so that they can see beyond themselves, that they can be able to envision realities, that they can embrace these complex truths, and they can be able to see in their mind all of these ancient stories that happened. You need to encourage a child's imagination if you want them to see Genesis 1, 2, and 3 whenever it talks about the creation. When God took dust from the ground to be able to create man with bones and organs, living things. He took the rib from the man and to be able to fashion the perfect counterpart, the woman. You need imagination to be able to envision what it must have been like for a man to be in a field and at a distance see a flickering light, only to find that it's a bush that will not burn, and that the voice of God spoke to him through that bush. To be able to imagine in our mind's eye what in the world heaven must be like. to be able to see in our mind the miracles that Jesus performed as he traveled through all of these ancient cities. Don't miss this. God gave us an imagination so that we could imagine the unimaginable. It's not in our mind's eye. Stories are the thing that spark and ignite our creative senses. And stories have the potential to stretch our perspectives about God. And the way Jesus did this was through parables. Much of the way that he connected to people was through telling parables. In Matthew 13:34, it says this: Jesus spoke all these things to the crowd in parables. He didn't say anything to them without using a parable. By the way, this is the reason why Jesus was such a master at spinning parables to teach people about the character of God, is because he was God. And so you can imagine the creator of the cerebrum is the one creating the stories so that we can be able to connect them back to a perfect God, and that he can actually be the one to tell you the story. It's pretty crazy. That's why these stories are so timeless. That's why the stories and parables that he told are so powerful and so life-changing. If you want kids and teenagers to have a perspective about this world, if you want their personal story to connect to a bigger story where God is the author, then as a parent or leader, create a storytelling culture. Create a story reading culture. Stories over time will give your kid a richer history. It'll give them stories over time that will transform their perspective. Stories. The fifth thing that every kid or teenager needs over time are tribes. Everyone say tribes. So what exactly is a tribe? We would describe a tribe as a group of people connected by something in common. And this can be anything. Common ideas, ancestry, sports teams, politics. And if we think about it, we actually identify ourselves in tribes. I am a musician. I am a blogger. I am a foodie. Yes and amen. I live to eat, not the other way around. I am a sports fan. I am a mom. I'm a student. Tribes are just people who share something in common, kind of like a club that you sign up for. But don't miss this. The cool thing about tribes over time is it creates community that feels like family, and that is family. That's why what you do every single week as a parent, as a leader, matters so much, because you are helping them to develop a sense of belonging. That's our equation for tribes, that tribes over time equal belonging. Just like love, words, and stories were important to God, so were tribes. And sometimes we can misunderstand the purpose of tribes, and the Pharisees did this really well. They made tribes so exclusive and not inclusive. They created a religion and rules to where it was so hard to be able to be a part of this and to be able to feel like you could live right with all of these things in place. But Jesus came, he flipped the script, and he said, no. Tribes are a place where you do belong. Tribes are a place where you are known. Tribes are a place where you can belong. You can be included. He actually went to the Pharisees to be able to prove this point. And what did he do? He told a story. You probably know this story. It's a good one, and it's one that we probably know. He told a story about a father and two sons. The youngest son left home prematurely. He took his father's inheritance because he wanted to be able to go out and make a way for himself. He wanted to make a fortune. He wanted to make new friends. Unfortunately for him, this ended horribly because he made a series of wrong decisions, wrong financial decisions. He needed to take our financial wellness small groups course, and this would not have happened to him. But he made these wrong decisions, and he hit rock bottom. And whenever he did that, he was like, I want to go home. I've had my run, baby. I want to go home. And then Michael Bublé came out of the corner and serenaded him all the way to his hometown. My imagination at work. No, but I imagine that this son, he went home because he had hit rock bottom, and as he came to the top of a hill, I imagined his house to be a big white house. And he saw it over the hillside, and as he went walking down, he couldn't get there fast enough because his dad came running towards him with the biggest hug he could ever imagine. His father knew something. His father said, "My son was lost, and now he's found." Translated, my son has lost his way, but now he's back where he belongs. He was a smart dad who knew that tribes matter, so he did two things. The first thing he did is he gave his son a ring to remind him that he still belonged to a family. The second thing that he did is he threw him a party to reassure him that he still had a community of people who said, "You still have a seat at this table. This is a place where you can be known. This is a place where you are welcome. This is a place where you belong. And this is a place where you are forgiven." That kind of belonging is something only tribes can do. And the most strategically positioned to do this the best are church and the family. In our family ministries area, we use a curriculum called Orange. And I love the concept of this because it's idea of red being the family and orange being, red being the family and yellow being the church. And they meld together to be able to make this color orange. We are better together. Kids and teenagers desperately need people who know them. They desperately need people who welcome them and forgive them and give them a seat at the table. This idea of belonging is actually what makes our faith as Christians really distinctive because it's all wrapped up in this idea of grace. Grace is this: you don't belong because you deserve to belong. You belong because God has accepted you and God has forgiven you. Think about this. You have the advantage, if you had the advantage of growing up, knowing that you are known by a God in a way that you are not known by any other. Every thought, every desire, and every action, and that He will welcome you into His tribe forever. That's belonging. Remember what we said, that what happens in a kid's life may be even more important than what happens in their adult life, because that we're fostering that grace. We're fostering whatever happens whenever we can extend grace to those that we love. We can't feel forgiven by people who don't really know you. And that's why we need tribes over time. 1 Peter 2:10 says this. This is about tribes. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. Kids need to be known before they are known, before they can feel welcome. Kids need to be known before they can feel forgiven. Kids have a really good radar at being able to see fake from a mile away. They need to feel known over time. So if you're a small group leader or a parent, they need to know that they have a seat at your table whenever things don't work out right, whenever they might fail you, whenever they might make a wrong decision. They need to know that you're going to give them a ring and that you're going to throw them a party. So the sixth thing that every kid needs, and the last thing is this: brace yourself. Are you ready? Fun, right? Kids and teenagers need fun. I said it. It's okay to have fun at church. And man, do we have a ton of it. There are so many different ways that we weave in biblical truths. We dance, we party, we create, we do macrame, we dance, we do all the things. Because we know that fun is such a pivotal part of relationship. It's also okay to have fun at home. Did you know that? It's okay to have fun at home. If you hope to have any kind of lasting relationship with them, you need to be able to have fun. I have a picture up behind me. I was prepping for this message this past week. And whenever I got home, I walked in the door. I think this was Thursday. I walked in my living room, and this is what I found. It's a fort. Any fort makers as kids? Yes. Right? It shaped your family history. It's a story you can remember. But I walked in and I saw this fort, and Jonathan, he was on kid duty, and he could have done anything, but he decided to put aside his responsibilities and have some fun with his kids. And so with Grayson, he built this fort knowing he'd have to fold every single sheet afterwards. I actually folded all the sheets. It's okay, though. But whenever I looked in the opening of the fort, I came home, and this is what I found. Grayson and Jonathan were in there. They had decorated this only the way a man could, with their pajamas hanging in the background. They put a lamp. There was a little lantern, all of the stuffed animals, and they were just having so much fun. And Grayson was so excited. That's what fun does over time. And we need to be able to create time for that in our lives. Whether your teenager is older and that fun looks like playing a video game, it looks like going out to dinner, it looks like talking with them about what outfit they're going to wear. With kids, I know we have play dates, but play dates aren't always meant for you to hang out with your friend. You're sometimes supposed to play with the kids. Not be a watcher of the play, but be able to play, to be able to create with Play-Doh, to make these little things have weird voices that you wouldn't be caught dead doing any of in public, to have dance parties, to be able to look so silly, for the hopes that that fun will be able to equal a relationship, that will be able to bring on a specific way that they can open up to you whenever the time is right. I'm going to tell you about 2 small group leaders that we have. They understand this idea that fun over time equals connection. These small group leaders are Clayton and Noelle, and they serve in our preschool area. They wrote because they wanted to be able to share what it was like serving for them. And there's a picture of them that's going to pop up behind me. But they wrap this idea of fun in every single thing that they do. They're awesome. But when they wrote, they said this: on any given Sunday, you can find us scrubbing crayon off the floor, or the kids' favorite, using Clayton as a human jungle gym, which I think there's a picture. They were fine, I promise. We love serving on the preschool crew, and it would be an understatement to say anything else. We get to teach biblical truths along with dance parties, teach them how to pray. Then they go on to say how they moved up with their group of 2-year-olds from the purple to the orange room. They said, we're a part of this tribe. I don't just need to give them up for the next group. We want to stick with these guys. And the impact of that has been incredible. They say, we love to continue loving on them and watching them grow and mature in their faith. Serving on this crew with these kids have reminded us of God's faithfulness, and that regardless of their age, they're never too little to know and love Jesus. Isn't that awesome? There's also another picture of Clayton. He also serves as a small group leader with our 7th grade boys. And he's in full costume, second from the right there. I think I've seen him on Wednesdays. He brings an extra outfit that is not his work professional outfit, because he knows that he needs to be able to have fun. He needs to be able to move and be comfortable. But this is what it means to be able to show up big. This is what it means to be able to show up over time. Not just check a box and say, I volunteered, but to be able to give part of yourself. So what you might need to do is you might need to show up more. You might need to have a few more dance parties. You might need to laugh. God certainly seems to take fun seriously, so seriously that most of the time he tells us to focus on relationship with him by singing, by dancing, by celebrating, by eating, by drinking lemonade. I'm sure that's what he's meaning. Lots of lemonade. But God designed fun in our lives. If you don't believe me, you can think of what happens whenever you even see a dog. Dogs innately will come and nudge your knee over and over again because they want you to throw the ball, right? They are built with that innate sense of fun. The word fun may not be in the Bible, but all of its relatives are. May the righteous be glad. Rejoice in the Lord always. A cheerful heart is good medicine. The fruit of the Spirit is joy. The truth is that fun actually convinces kids that you like them. They might know that you love them, but do they really know and feel that you like them? The best way to be able to give that is to be able to have fun. Fun also, over time, reconnects what's been disconnected. Therapists they've been really keen on this idea for a while. They have play therapists, where whenever you go in to be able to talk about something, they might first play with a dollhouse with the kiddo before they open up. Or with a high schooler, sit down and talk over a game of chess or checkers. It's that fun that helps to open the door for connection. Fun also fosters resilience. Life is really hard. And if we want our kids to grow up and push through heartbreak and tragedy and all the things that we wish that would never happen on them, if we can be able to fuel that together and reassure them that life goes on because they can remember all the fun memories, they can be able to look and say, this is only for a season because I know that joy comes. I see that. It can help them to be able to keep fighting for relationship even when it's difficult. And lastly, fun authenticates forgiveness. Fun authenticates forgiveness. It's really hard to have fun with someone if you're not convinced that they've forgiven you, if you're still offended by something that he or she did. It's really hard to fake forgiveness with kids. And they may not believe that you've really forgiven them unless you take time to have fun with them. If you love kids, but you don't play with them, they may never really feel like you like them. For your teenager, if you just continuously use words and stories that aren't fun, that are boring, they may not really listen. If they're not a part of a tribe that laughs, they won't want to be a part of it. And this is another thing, your kids need to see you and your spouse laughing too. They need to be able to see you guys having fun and engaging in that together. If you want to build trust, if you want to have a lasting influence, if you want to establish a deeper connection, you've got to make fun a priority. Watch this. Every year in a kid's life, they have 52 weeks. 52 weeks in a year. We need to make sure that we give our kids time, that we give them words, that we give them love, that we give them stories, a tribe over time that they can feel connected with, and that we can give them fun. And every single person sitting in this room has a part to play in that. This morning, I want you to think about where this finds you. Maybe you need to hit a restart button. Maybe for you, life is passing you by as a parent, and you're like, wait a minute. I need to sit and I need to realize what's most important. My kid needs to know whose he is and who he belongs to. My kid needs to know that they belong no matter what happens, that they can have a seat at my table. They need to know that they can have fun so that they can be able to build a relationship that lasts. Maybe for you, it's time for you to get out of the sidelines and to be able to help lead a tribe. There's so many ways here for you to be able to get involved, from our smallest babies to the preschoolers, to our elementary kids, to our youth age kids, to our young adults. You could be a person that they look at and they say, you know what? That person was there for me. This person showed up big. Thank you for showing up big for me in the most difficult phase of my life. You can be that person. God hasn't not called you to that. We are better together. I'm so thankful that Grayson has people in his life that is not just me and Jonathan, to be able to speak into his life, to be able to give time and words whenever we won't be able to. You'll have an opportunity for that after service to go and sign up. There are so many ways to get involved. Don't sit on the sidelines. Be a part of the story that God's called you to be. It's just a phase, and we don't want to miss it. Let's pray. God, I thank you for every parent in this room, for every parent that has and person who has decided to show up big in the lives of a kid. Parenting is the most exciting, the most confusing, the most rewarding, and the most anxious-filled thing, God. Help us this morning to look to you to be our guide, to look to you to find answers on how to raise our kids, to be able to show them truth with our love and our words. Help us to find the time. Help us to carve out time for fun. Carve out time for our family to show them that their tribe is one that is a safe place. Their tribe is one that they will always have a seat at. Help us to see the moments. Help us to see the stories that we know will fashion their future. I thank you for our kids, that you would in this moment create bonds with mentors and small group leaders who will create a tribe of trust that will see them through all of the toughest times that they may face. I pray that every student will have one person that can connect them to their faith. Help every parent in this room to know that it's not too late, that they can be the switch to their generational dysfunction, and that they can be able to point their child or their teenager to a loving God. Bless every single person in this room today. In Jesus' name, amen.